Hey guys, welcome to the Tim Lauer Podcast, where we talk about all things small business, real estate, politics, local and national, that affect you right here. Today we're joined by a husband, dad, prosecutor, and the House ethics guy for District 96, Matt Simpson. Welcome to the show.
Tim, thanks for having me, buddy. It's my third time on the show. We've been in a different place every time. Last time was the boat. And it was fantastic to be the first podcast on the boat I've ever done.
Yes, that was a lot of fun.
It was
out
a blast.
there, rolled around Ono Island into Florida just a tad bit, and then right back into Perdido Beach. It was awesome.
That was the most fun I've ever had on a podcast.
Nice,
I will tell you that for sure.
Well, till today.
Until today.
That's right. So, Matt, tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your little bit of background, and maybe some stories of when you grew up.
Perfect. My name is Matt Simpson. I'm a state representative. I represent District 96 in the Alabama House of Representatives. Covers Daphne, Spanish Fort, a little bit of Montrose up to the Bromley area a little bit, and just kind of in between on the Eastern Shore.
Okay.
Before I was elected, I was a prosecutor full-time. Now I'm a prosecutor part-time, so we just got out of session.
Oh, wow.
So I'm happy to be done with legislative session, and I'll go back to prosecuting in a little bit, but that's my background. That's what I came up from. I was a prosecutor full-time for 12 years, and now I've been a part-time prosecutor for another 4. I really, that's my passion. You know, I went to law school and had an opportunity to intern with the DA's office in the Shelby County DA's office while I was at law school at Cumberland, and just fell in love with potentially being a prosecutor, and just that side of it, of fighting for the right things, fighting for the community, fighting to protect those that have been, hurt. So I was started with the Shelby County DA's office as a law school intern, and then came down here and practiced law for a little bit, and then got into the Baldwin County DA's office. I was with the Baldwin County DA's office from 2006 to 2010, into 2011. So I'm in the beginning of 2011. And for the most part of my time in Baldwin County, I was the child sex crimes prosecutor. Wow. So it was, that's the only cases I handled for about 4 years.
Wow.
4.5 years was just those cases. So it leaves a mark on you. I know you just had Christy Haygood on.
Yeah.
Christy followed me in that role. I got to train Christy because when I got elected in 2018, that's when I left. But Christy followed me in that role. So I went from 2006 to 2011 with the DA's office in Baldwin County. And then in 2011, I went to the Mobile County DA's office. Was there from 2011 to 2017. And then when Bob Wilters got hired as the DA of Baldwin County, I came back and went back to the child sex crimes prosecutor. So from 2017 to 2018, I was doing the child sex crimes over here in Baldwin County again. That's just kind of my legal background. Most importantly, before anything else, I'm a Christian, I'm a husband, I'm a father. My wife and I have been married I got to get this right, we got married in 2003, so we're coming up on our 23rd anniversary, coming up in August. Thank you. She's put up with me for 23 years, so she's a saint. I really outkicked my coverage there. So just so y'all know, if y'all know Marina, I get so much further in life by just telling people I'm Marina's husband.
Okay, nice.
I'm not Representative Simpson. If I can just get in that I'm Marina's husband, it works out so much better for me. And we have 2 wonderful children. My son John Wallace is 18. He's a senior at Daphne High School, and he has committed to go to Alabama. That's where he's going to go to school. That's where Roll Tide. That's where Marina and I met. We met at Alabama, and we were college sweethearts, and came down. It's awesome to see him following our footsteps to go up there. That's great. I've tried to talk him out of it, but he wants to be a lawyer. He wants to study public policy, and he wants to be a prosecutor. So, I've tried to go tell him there's plenty of ways to go make some money, but he wants it, and you can't really fault him because it's in his blood.
That's right.
And then we have our daughter, as a 13-year-old Elizabeth. She's in 7th grade. So we love we're a close-knit family. We attend Coastal Church. Marina and I are elders at Coastal Church. So that's just kind of the background of who we are.
That's awesome. What's the hardest case you've ever prosecuted?
Oh, gosh. There's been several. So one of the hardest ones that I remember, one of the first ones that kind of got me down the path of child sex crimes, there was a case where there was a minister in Foley that had abused 4 little boys.
Wow. And
unfortunately, it took so long for them to go through the judicial process that when you're talking about boys who were 6, 7, 8, 9 years old at the time, when it takes 5, 6, 7 years to go through the system, when the jury's looking at them, they're seeing 15, 16, 17-year-old men. They're not seeing the 7, 8-year-old boys that it was that this took, that these acts occurred on.
Wow.
So that was a very, very difficult case, and it was very, very difficult, and it kind of set me up on. Before I came in, there wasn't a specialized prosecutor on child sex crimes.
Okay.
So after I tried that case, Judy Newcomb was the DA at the time, and I'd asked her, I said, look, can I just do this full time, or this be the ones that I handle? Just because I couldn't take it anymore to see how long the judicial process went.
Wow.
That one was a big one. One of the most high profile cases I've done was a teacher at Central Baldwin Middle School who had abused 4 little girls. And so, anytime you start talking about people like teachers or anybody that violates the law and some of that, that one was tough.
Yeah.
They're all, especially when you're talking about child cases like that, they're all difficult because you have children, they're taking away their innocence.
That's
and
right.
some kids all respond differently. There's no paint by number on how kids are going to respond to those type of crimes. So when they're victims, a lot of times they kind of pull away from others, and it's not as easy to get them to talk. It's not as easy to get them to discuss what's happened to them. It's terrible, and it's something that it changes you. It changed me as a person. It changed me as a prosecutor. It changed me, as a father. My daughter, we do not have spend the night out. She stays at home at night. Our kids, both of my kids did not. John Wallace got a cell phone with internet when he was in high school. Like did not have social media until he was a junior in high school, or maybe sophomore, junior in high school. Just the stuff that I've seen so many cases of, kids that get taken advantage of on the internet, and you have situations where something happens online that they don't tell their parents about, and somebody uses that against them, and they start these threats, and it's extortion, and they get them to do more and more events and more acts, and it just kind of tears families up.
Wow.
So it changed me. That side of being a child sex crimes prosecutor changed me. Since I've been in Mobile for a while, I'm prosecuting murders. A lot of murders over in Mobile, death penalty cases. It's unfortunately there's a lot of those over in Mobile. Yeah. It's just a different atmosphere. It's a different environment than we have in Baldwin County. We don't really have nearly the death penalty cases over here in Baldwin County that we did in Mobile. But so it's interesting to see. It's a different style of victim as far as when you have a child victim that's the victim of sex crimes. They're still here. They still have to go through this. When you have a murder victim, that you have to work with the families who family's not there. The victim's not there. It's just a whole different. It's a loss, but a loss in a different way when you have the loss of an innocence versus the actual loss of a life.
Yeah.
So it's been, I've had an experience trying all kinds of cases. I've tried ethics cases. I've tried, everything from DUI. I've went through juvenile court, district court, circuit court, murder team, child sex. I can't think of a single case that I haven't tried.
Wow.
So that's just, I'm a prosecutor at heart. It was one of those things that people are like, oh, now you're in the legislature. What are you going to do? And I'm like, I'm still a prosecutor, and I still fight for what I believe is right. Criminal justice is something that I believe strongly in. Law enforcement, family, serving your community is something that we teach our kids. Like, we don't do what we do for the money. We do what we do to kind of make the community a better place, a safer place. The public's a safer place, because I feel like at the end of the day, if I can look at my family, if I can come home at night and feel like, hey, the public's a little bit safer because of the job I did today, that's a good day.
Hope you're enjoying the Tim Lauer podcast so far. We talk about all things small business, real estate, politics, local and national issues that affect you most. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and be sure to drop a comment below. I read and reply to each and every one. Now let's get back to it. Absolutely. So I know those years probably affected you when you were doing the child safety or child sex cases. And there was recently an article that came out. It said, I think the headline I'm paraphrasing was, "Some people need to die." And it was, it was for Matt Simpson, but it was from a recent legislation you put in for the death penalty. You go ahead and say it. It's a lot of words.
The Child Predator Death Penalty Act.
That's it. Yep.
So what it was we allowed for, and I'm very happy this bill passed, for those that have raped, sodomized, or sexual tortured a child under the age of 12 could be eligible for the death penalty in Alabama. It goes back to a Supreme Court case in 2008, which was Kennedy versus Louisiana. And in that Supreme Court, the Supreme Court ruled that it was a violation of cruel and unusual punishment to have the death penalty because they said there were so few states that had the death penalty for child rape.
Okay.
There were only 5 states at the time. Well, we started to see a national push. It started in 2023 when Florida passed the first bill under Governor DeSantis, where it was they're attacking the Kennedy decision. And they want to say that it's not unusual because more states are doing it. So Florida passed it in 2023. Tennessee passed it in 2024. I filed the bill for the 2025 legislative session, but it did not pass. But in 2025, you had Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Idaho passed it.
Oh, wow.
And then so this year, 2026, it was able to pass the Alabama state. The legislature passed it. The governor signed it into law. I'd filed it in 2025 for the 2025 session because I saw what was happening nationwide to go through it, and unfortunately, just didn't get passed. Didn't have the momentum to get through it. Got through the House, got through the Senate committee, but it just did not get through the Senate body itself. Well, after we got out of session, they had this horrible incident in Bibb County where they had kids were. Man, it's so heartbreaking to see. You had parents that were just basically renting their kids out. Wow. People were making appointments to come do all these terrible, terrible acts on these young children. That caught the attention of a lot of people throughout the state to say, hey, what can we do to punish these people? I had a chance to go up to Washington, D.C. with the Alabama legislature, and we had a meeting with the Trump administration. And the Trump administration said the death penalty for child predators is a priority for this administration. We want to, they had a list of these were their 4 or 5 issues that they really wanted state legislatures to take up. And I was very honored that bill was on there. And they knew where Alabama was. They knew we had that bill filed. They knew about me and through there. And they were like, y'all need to fix this. Y'all need to go through it. So the governor's office was there. We came back once we landed back from back in Alabama from D.C. And the next day, the governor and the attorney general both put out statements that said, we support this bill. This bill needs to pass. This is a priority legislation. I can't thank Governor Ivey enough for what she did. We were able to hold a press conference with Senator April Weavers, who carried it in the Senate.
Yeah.
She represents parts of Bibb County, so that incident occurred in her district. She's a fireball, man. She's fantastic. And having her support through that is really what was able to drive it through the Senate this time. I got it through the House, but being able to have her there to get it through the Senate is what made the difference through this process. And I feel good about where we are. We've passed it. I think Mississippi is either passed it or close to passing it now. I think you're starting to see more states take this up, and we want the Supreme Court to challenge it. We want them to say, okay, now because more states are doing it, it's no longer unusual. So therefore, that rationale that we used is no longer applied. Plus, we have a new Supreme Court now, thanks to the President Trump and the Trump administration, that I feel really confident when we get that first case up that's challenged, I really think we have a shot of overturning the Kennedy decision. And because of my background, because I've seen the number of cases that I've tried when you have someone so young that has these events happen to them, they can never get their innocence back. And part of this is if you do this on a child that young, you can never be rehabilitated. Yeah. It's not something where you come out and be like, oh, I made a mistake, I've learned from it. No, if you've done something like that to someone that young, you need to pay it. I think it's the worst of the worst offenses you can do on someone.
I agree.
And because it's the worst of the worst offenses, it deserves the worst of the worst punishments.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for your work on that. Such hard work on it and much needed across the board. And like you said, it's opening up for many more states to come involved. Switching gears a little bit, what does the state representative do or responsible for those that don't know?
I've always viewed it as my job as a representative is to take the voice of Baldwin County up to Montgomery and bring a little bit more Baldwin County into Montgomery and a little bit less Montgomery into Baldwin County. That's something that I believe firmly in. I think that, you get up there and you get tied up into the bubble and you kind of think, Montgomery's a small town and you start getting through all this stuff and you start focusing on what's going on in Montgomery. A lot of times I've seen people lose sight of, I'm not here to represent Montgomery. I'm here to represent the people of my district, the people of District 96. So, the job is to listen. The first and foremost, my job is to listen. My second job is after I've listened to what the people have to say and what they're wanting and what they feel, my job is to advocate for them and get across the line, the finish line, and push through. Now, nobody's going to agree with me 100% of the time. My wife doesn't agree with me 100% of the time.
Mine neither.
So, not everybody's going to agree with every vote that I have, but I'll be happy to talk with them and explain the rationale and reason why I did what I did. And I think that's important. I think we've lost sight of that in politics anymore, where it's kind of become so tribal, where it's, if you take one vote against something that I don't like, or you do one thing that I disagree with, then I'm going to write you off and say, you're not this or you're not this. Reagan used to make the bet. One of my favorite Reagan quotes is, "My 80% friend is not my 20% enemy."
That's right.
You've got to look at where you can agree and try to figure out, Democrats, they have it in line of where they don't care what the person, if that's their candidate, they're 1,000% behind that candidate and they fall in line. Republicans are a little bit more independent in that, and that's fine. That's great. That's why I am a Republican. I don't want anybody to tell me how I have to feel or how I'm supposed to vote. I've gotten my own way with issues, but I also understand not everybody's going to agree with me. And we're not a cult. We're not going to tell people, hey, you're going to flip how you feel based on what the candidate says.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless if that's national politics or state politics, I'm going to stand up for my principles. I'm going to stand up for what I believe in. And it's part of it. So, I will listen and do everything I can to represent the people that I represent, but I'm going to stand up for the principles that I believe in. Now, if tomorrow, I'll be honest with you, I'm pro-life. So if tomorrow 50,000 people move into District 96 and those people are pro-choice, well, I'm going to stand for my principles and vote the way I believe. And if those people vote me out, then they vote me out. And that's not the worst thing in the world that's ever happened to me. But I'm going to stand for what I believe through this process.
That's right. Absolutely. What's something that may surprise people about Montgomery or what you've dealt with as a state representative?
I think the biggest surprise that I've had through there is there's a lot of things that people agree on that
Mm-hmm.
don't get the attention of, hey, we're moving things along, we're doing the right things. One of the things was the grocery sales tax. We cut the grocery sales tax by half this quadrennium, the largest sales tax the largest tax cut in Alabama history.
Wow.
This quadrennium, we've cut about $1.5 billion in taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So the sales tax used to be 4% from the state percentage. Now it's 2%.
Okay.
We were able to pass this year, a bill came up the past couple of weeks where we are suspending the 2% that the state has for the next few months just because of the way the economy is going to go through all that. We're suspending that. So it'll be 0% for the 2 months. But when we come back, it'll be half. It'll still be that 2%. Now, you look at it and you say, okay, you cut the grocery tax in half. My view is that's not good enough. There's still half to go. But I don't want to put this 2-month moratorium on it. I want this to be a permanent sales tax cut. Just because that's more money back into people's pockets. That's more money that's not them. I think the surprise that I would say is Democrats and Republicans worked together on that bill. And it wasn't controversial. It wasn't heated. It was one of those things that we just did what we needed to do to get through for the good of the people. Of course, some people wanted it all the way. You kind of have to take it in installments. Every year that I've been there, I've been able to help. I've been able to push for the grocery sales tax to be cut. I've sponsored bills in the past. I've sponsored bills that were filed by Democrats to cut it. I've sponsored bills by Republicans that were filed to cut it. And so to see that come together and get that done and make that difference in the American family's politics, it's all about affordability. It's all about making sure we have to understand that the money that we are given, it's taxpayer dollars. It's not our money. It's not budget's money. It's not the state's money. It's taxpayers' money that the government has taken from them. We have to be stewards of that money. That's our commission. One of the best ways that I've learned is to give that money back to the people. I think it's a misnomer. I think it's a little bit disingenuous when people say, oh, well, if you cut taxes, you're going to cut the budgets and you're going to do these things. I disagree somewhat, and I feel confident about my status because we've been able to see our budgets have grown even though we've cut the grocery. If you take that money and you say, let's say it's 2% or we hopefully get that holy 4%. Well, if somebody spends $100 on the grocery store, they get, $2 back or $4 back or whatever it's going to be from there. I don't think that that's money that's going to just stay in the grocery store. Meaning they're not going to go and say, if you're normally buying a hamburger, you're not going to go and say, hey, I got $4 more. I'm going to go buy a steak. That's dollars that they're going to be able to put back into the economy. They're going to be able to go shopping at a mom and pop store. You talk about making sure, I know one of your issues is very big about making sure local business and small businesses have access to these things. That's money that's back into the economy, and that money gets spent again in those local stores. those are the ones that support your local baseball teams. Those are the ones that have this. Those are people that are living day to day based on that money that those customers come in. It's not some conglomerate, super, great big corporation that's coming in. These are people that work in our community every day, and they just do the best they can to provide goods and services for the people in our community. And if we can have more people with money in their pocket to give to those people, that tax dollar keeps rotating over and over and over again. It's not just dead and gone. Mm-hmm. It's used multiple times for multiple reasons.
That's right. I want to talk about experience a little bit. When you first got elected, how long did it kind of take you to find your way?
Short answer is I'm still finding my way.
Okay, all right.
No, I was blessed when I came in, when I first got elected, which was 2018. I was able to serve with Steve McMillan, Joe Faust, and Harry Shiver. And they had, between them, they had about 70 plus years of experience. Wow. Steve McMillan had served for 40 something years. Joe Faust had served for, I think 16, and Harry had served for about 16. And so that was a wealth of institutional knowledge that I could lean on and go back and go ask questions and find these things out. Mm-hmm. But it's not there until you see it. It takes you a while to figure out where the bathrooms are. It takes you a while to figure out, okay, what is going on here? What's really happening? When you come in and you're inexperienced, it's the nature of politics. The experienced politicians are going to try to, okay, well, this person doesn't know what they're doing, so I'm going to see what can I get away with? Should have potentially gone to that district. Let me see if I can get a little bit more into my district and see what we can do. That's just the nature of the game that you're playing with. Unfortunately, we're outnumbered in Montgomery. That was a very eye-opening experience when you walk up and you're like, hey, we're Baldwin County. Why? We should be getting more. We should be getting this.
Absolutely.
And you walk in and you see, wait a second, the majority of the population is in North Alabama. One of the most eye-opening experiences for me was having a conversation with the guy from North Alabama, representative from North Alabama. And he was just, the South gets everything. The South of the state gets everything. We were talking about prisons. We were talking about some things. And they're like, the South gets everything. I was like, wait a second. Because I feel like the North gets everything. So we were having this conversation, and it was like, the light bulb goes off in my head. It's like, what do you consider the South? And he said, really, I think anything maybe south of Birmingham is South Alabama.
Wow.
And I was like, wait a second now. That's not what I consider South Alabama. That's not the way it looks on a map. I think anything, just my personal deal is anything north of the Conecuh sausage plant is probably North Alabama, in my opinion. But I'll give them Central Alabama through there. But it's just a different perspective. And having these conversations and being able to go up and talk to these people and to see what they think. Well, it's like, why do you think the South gets everything? Because they think the rest of the state south of Birmingham is South Alabama, and that's just not the case. But you talk about experience. It takes time to build those relationships, to be able to go to someone from North Alabama and say, look, this is important to us. This is something that's important to South Alabama. I get, let's put the regional biases aside, but please understand that sometimes what's good for you and can be good for us as well. Sometimes it's a give and take from both sides. If something's going on, if Space Command is coming to Huntsville, that's great for South Alabama too. If North Alabama gets an interstate, help through 565, some expansion to go through there, that's great. But next time I'm gonna need your help to come down here to I-10 when we need to expand I-10, to expand the bridge, the Mobile Bay Bridge. You build those relationships over time. You build the ability to walk into somebody's room and their office and say, hey, can we work through this process? I was very honored. One of the biggest things, and it just came out Tuesdays, I think, when the governor signed the budgets. One of the great things that I was able to do was we got a little over $2.5 million budgeted for Blakely State Park in Spanish Fort.
Oh, nice.
Right there. It's a tremendous, tremendous asset to our community, and a lot of people don't know it's there. So they're going to create this interpretive center, and we were able to get over $2.5 million from state funds to come down to Blakely to help build that. And that's experience. That's knowing, hey, I've helped you here, or I've helped you do things, or I've helped you see things. I need help down here. That's what it takes. I'm blessed to be able to serve with, like I said, I had the experience with Harry, Joe, and Steve. Well, now I'm serving with Donna, Jennifer, and Francis. I'm sorry, I'm going to rephrase this. Representative Donna Givens, Representative Jennifer Fiddler, and Representative Francis Holt Jones. Now, we're the four that live in Baldwin County, the representatives that live in Baldwin County. We also have three others representatives that don't live in Baldwin County but represent part of Baldwin County.
Gotcha.
We have Alan Baker, who's the dean of the delegation. He is a lifesaver for me on education issues. Alan is a wealth of knowledge and one of the most influential people that I've been able to have a chance to talk to and work with. But you have to learn who knows what, and you have to figure out, okay, let's say there's 1,000 bills that are filed every year. There was over 1,000 that were filed this year. I'm not an expert on 1,000 topics. Tim, you're a home builder. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know home building issues. You're realtors. There's realtor issues that I'm not familiar with. Now, I can go to war over criminal justice issues, but I don't understand some realtor issues. To be able to pick up and say, okay, what experience does this person have? Like Alan Baker is he's a former teacher. So I can go to Alan Baker and say, talk to me about this education issue. Talk to me about what's really happening through this process. What does this really mean? You have to learn that. You have to learn who you can trust. You have to learn who you can't trust. You have to learn, I'm not going to say political favors, but it's building relationships to be able to say, hey, pick up the phone and call, hey, I need some help with an issue here. It's being able to figure out to represent our constituents, to be able to say, man, there's a couple of stories I'd love to tell you to talk about, to go through some of this. I've had people, one of the first calls I got was a mom that had moved here from Texas. I got the call on December 23rd, and her child had insurance cover her medication that was required. It was life or death situations. Wow. Texas, their insurance covered it. In Alabama, their insurance didn't cover it.
Oh, wow.
So she calls me on December 23rd, right before Christmas Eve, and is like, I need help. I've got to figure out a way to get this medication for my daughter. So I've learned who I need to be able to contact. I'm able to pick up the phone and say, hey, what can we do to help this constituent out to get through this? We were able to get that girl her medicine before Christmas. Wow. So you think about Christmas Eve, people are working to try to help get this girl her medication. We had another constituent who was on a cruise, and this was on Mother's Day. I think it was either Mother's Day or Father. I think it was Mother's Day. It had to be Mother's Day. So she was on a cruise. Her husband got injured on the cruise. He's in hospitals in Mexico because he's injured in cruise, and they won't let him out of the hospitals in Mexico. And she's trying to get help to get, what can I do to get back to the United States to give him the medical treatment he needs? Because it's, again, life or death situations. So to be able to pick up the phone and call the congressman's office, to call the senator's office, to know who they need to talk to, the U.S. Senator, U.S. Congress, to know who they need to talk to figure out what we need to do on the state end and what we can work with our federal partners. What can we do to get these people back home, back to America, so they feel comfortable with their medication, comfortable with the treatment that they provide? That's experience. That's the stuff of being able to know, being able to have those relationships, to come up and be able to pick up the phone and say, we need help down here. I need somebody that needs help. I can help them. I think that's my role. So much of the focus is the votes that we take in Montgomery. That's, everybody wants to focus on that. When you think of think of a representative, you're thinking of, hey, this is, how did they vote on this issue? How did they vote on this? How did they vote on this? And that's important. And you should hold our feet to the fire to make sure we represent you. But that's just such a small portion of what we do. What also we do is put people in contact. Going through the COVID disaster that we went through, to being able to put in contact with unemployment to make sure that they were able to keep their lights on at their house. I lost my job. What can I do? How do we get in touch with unemployment? What do we need to do to get some of this COVID money in through? How can I help? The plans that were done through the federal Congress. I disagree with how they just printed money left and right from the federal government. They've really they haven't ruined our country because we're coming back. But they put us behind the 8 ball significantly. Just the inflation, just because they were, printing money left and right. I disagree with what they've done, but that doesn't mean that when it's time for my constituents and they need help, I need to put them in access to the money that they've done. If they're spending the money, it's my responsibility to get my constituents the opportunity to have access to that money.
Sure.
So being able to pick up the phone and go through that, that's experiences that you wouldn't have if you haven't done this. Now, people talk all the time about, those are the stories I'm going to remember. I'm not going to remember how I voted on a specific issue or this. I'm going to remember how I was able to help a constituent in their time of need. Some of the bills are, that is a significant bill to me, that Child Predator Death Penalty Act. That is a bill that I'll always remember. But another bill I'll always remember that I go back to was in my first term was creating a mental health court in Baldwin County. We were able to get the funding, we were able to get it passed and get it done because we're making differences in people's lives. Now, I am lock them up, put them behind bars situation.
Sure.
That's what I believe in criminal justice. But I also think that is reserved for the offenders that need it. Not everybody are going to be served by spending time in prison. If we can get them on the front end, if somebody's having a mental breakdown or an episode, if we can get them to access to care while they're still committing the smaller offenses. Mm-hmm. So let's say it's whether they're self-medicating with drugs or whether it's a public intox or whether it's a small theft of something like that, as long as they're not hurting people, let's give them an opportunity to have access to some form of treatment and get them early. Because if you don't stop it early, then you can let it snowball and it becomes a spiral, and those small thefts or those small drug possessions become drug dealers, or they become people that commit robbery or people commit violent offenses. I'd love to use what efforts we can on the front end to stop that. But however, once that person does commit one of those violent offenses, the gloves are off. This is not a treatment situation of once you've hurt somebody or once you've caused problems for other people. We're not, I look at you with a completely different lens. Instead of trying to get help for you, now I'm trying to make sure that the public as a whole understands that there are consequences to your actions. We'll help you do whatever we can. Baldwin County is blessed. We have a mental health court. We have a veterans court. We have a drug court. We have a lot of things to give people access to care and access to help before they commit these violent offenses. But once they commit these violent offenses, now you got to pay for what you've done.
That's great. And it's become such an issue nationwide. It's great that Baldwin County is tackling it in that way. We're about halfway through Trump's second term. Mm-hmm. A lot going on, to say the least, mm-hmm. with immigration, closing the borders, ICE agents, Venezuela, Iran, probably Cuba. Maybe in the next 2 years we'll have Greenland. There's just so much going on in the country right now. And there's so much turnover in Alabama coming. We're going to have a new governor, lieutenant governor, secretary, just down the line. How important is it that we keep some folks that are experienced in place to kind of push through these times?
I think it's very important. It's being able to have the contacts, again, like we're talking about, to be able to, hey, I've gone to D.C. and met with the Trump administration. So we have contacts with people in the Trump administration to go through. One of the things we were able to do, when Trump was able to close the border, that has changed so much of the drugs. Just what Trump was able to do to close the border changed so much of the drugs that were coming in. One of the first bills I passed this quadrennium, I'm happy to sponsor and happy to carry, was the bill that required mandatory minimums for fentanyl traffickers. Now, it's not the people that use the fentanyl. It's not the addicts we were going after, but we were going after the people, the bigwigs, the people that were carrying pure fentanyl and bringing it into our area. Yep. We were able to make Alabama one of the harshest crimes to have that. So they would say, "Hey, I'm not coming in here." We've seen deaths drop significantly. Overdose deaths have dropped significantly, not only in our state, but also in Baldwin County since we've been able to enact this law. But it's not just. I'm not going to take credit and say it's just this law. It's the working together aspect of it. Being able to reach out to the sheriff and say, hey, what are you seeing? Being able to reach out to the coroner and say, what are you seeing? Then being able to reach out to our federal partners, and when they can give us the description of the problem is fentanyl coming in, the problem is this pure fentanyl that's killing people. If any of your listeners or watchers or subscribers, click like and subscribe for my guy Tim.
Yes, please
looking
do.
out for you. If you're sitting there and you're having a cup of coffee and you see that sugar packet that's on the table over a cup of coffee, that's one of those sugar packets. If that was pure fentanyl, that being 1 gram is a lethal dose for up to 500 people.
Wow.
500 people from one of those little packets of sugar.
Unbelievable.
If it was pure fentanyl. So working with our federal government to be able to craft that law, working with everyone, it's all about relationships. It's about being able to. I represent Daphne, Spanish Fort, and some unincorporated areas through there, but I represent the entire county of Baldwin County. I represent the entire state. If I need to pick up the phone and say, hey, Tim, what's going on in Foley? What can I help you with? Even though you're not my district.
What you have.
It's not this. It's being able to say, how can I help with what you need? And knowing that we work together as a team, so much more can get done. And I don't care about the credit. You know, I love the phrase, imagine what could happen and what could get done if nobody cared who got the credit.
Yeah.
What can I do to help Foley? Being able to pick up the phone and say, okay, Mayor Sherry Sullivan in Fairhope. I don't represent a lot of Fairhope. I have a little small portion of it, but it's what can I do to help you, Mayor? Mayor Teal in Loxley, what can I do to help you? Picking up the phone and calling the county commission. We've got a lot of all 4 of our county commission have spots are up, and I think they're all contested races. We've had significant turnover. And you had Spanish Fort that has a new mayor, Brad Bass. You had Bay Minette that's got a new mayor. I think Summerdale and Robertsdale both have new mayors.
That's correct.
We're working with them. When I see Ruthie Campbell, the mayor of Robertsdale, it's, Mayor, what can I do to help you out? Brad Bass is fantastic. Brad reached out to me, and Dr. Barry Booth reached out to me and said, we want to rename 225, which is from 31 all the way up to the interstate. And that's where Blakely is. That's where the Veterans Cemetery is. Yep. There's a lot on that road. It's a very prestigious, historic road.
Absolutely.
And they said, we want to rename this road. We'd like to name it American Patriots Way.
Wow.
So I was able to pick up the phone and meet with ALDOT. I met with Mayor Bass and Barry Booth on Monday while I was out of session. That Thursday, I was able to have ALDOT come to my office and have a discussion about what do we need to do to get this done. And then 2 weeks later, we've got ALDOT that came down to Spanish Fort, and we're sitting around a table with all 4 county commissioners, representatives, city council from Spanish Fort, and we're saying what needs to be done. ALDOT's telling us what needs to happen to get this done, to get this changed, and we're working through that process. Experience goes a long way to being able to know, hey, if I pick up the phone and call Tony Harris, who's the government relations with ALDOT, Tony, can you help me walk me through this process? And Tony and I have worked on projects in the past. We've worked on projects to make sure that Joe Faust got a road named after him through this ceremonial. This was an actual road name change. So just being able to pick up the phone and establish the new mayor, Brad Bass, put him in contact with ALDOT, so that way that creates that relationship for him as well. We have the Go Mesa funds with Chris Blankenship from the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Being able to work with him, I've worked with him for 8 years now. So I'm able to have the conversations with him of when we had 5 Rivers that was up for sale. A lot of people in the community started getting upset and worrying about why is 5 Rivers for sale? We want to keep it for what it's done. We want to keep the natural habitat that's there to celebrate what's going on. How do we keep that? So I'm able to pick up the phone and call Chris and say, Chris, what's going on? And Chris is like, this is what's really happening. So I'm able to find out that Alabama Wildlife Federation is the one that wants to buy it, but it has to go up for bid because it's state property, so you can't just sell it. You have to bid it. So I'm able to kind of calm the constituents down and say, this would be really, really good for our region. Just give it a chance to let it work out and play. And there's a trust that goes with that. So knowing who to contact, knowing who to call, knowing what you can do, that's my job. Like, that's what I enjoy. That's what I like, being able to put stuff together through. And being able to reach out to the schools and say, okay, if the schools are struggling, and hey, the Daphne High School is building this monument for armed services, and so they're having a flagpole, and at the flagpole they're having benches to recognize each of the branches of the armed services, and they're having bricks, and they're going through this project. I was able to get some community grants to help fund that so they can celebrate and do this stuff. So I'm able to put schools in touch with the right people to get some of this stuff done. I'm able to help Blakely get $2.5 million. That's experience coming through that I had no clue how to do that first year. I had no clue how to do that second, third, and fourth year some. Yeah. So it's experiences. I understand people are angry and they get upset and they just throw everybody out with, just throw them all out. Well, that doesn't really help Baldwin County grow, because if we throw everybody out, well, then what happens is those counties from the north, those counties from all around will say, okay, well, if Baldwin County doesn't know how to get money, well, then I'll know how to take Baldwin County's money. And they'll use it for themselves up there.
Absolutely. With the Trump's administration's change on the border policies, what are some of the changes you've seen as a state rep and a prosecutor as far as those fentanyl and death penalties and different things?
The drug rate, the overdose rate is down significantly because we were able to close the border. You look across the country and the murder rate is down. You see an effect. It's crazy when you look at it and you see the simple thing of just being able to shut down the border and make sure that border is protected and we know who's coming in and nobody's just able to walk in, just walk in like it's an open door. The simple move of shutting down that border has been able to drop violent crimes. It's been able to drop murders throughout the country. So it's not often you see a policy make such a drastic impact, but the policies that Trump policy did make that drastic impact of shutting down the border. The overdoses, again, the violent crimes are down. That's what we voted for. That's what we campaigned for. That's what we were trying to do. And working with the federal government to do that, that's been fantastic to see.
Awesome. What are some things that we haven't covered that you want to make a point to the voters?
I think one of the things that I would like for the voters to understand is everybody's trying to do the best job they can. I really do feel like there's a lot of people that are trying to do the best job that they can. Reach out to us and inform us of some things. Again, there's over 1,000 bills that have been filed. Mm-hmm. So I don't know 1,000 issues. So if you have an issue with real estate, reach out and say, hey, Matt, this affects me. This bill affects me. I respect all the lobbyists in Montgomery. I respect what they're doing. I respect that their job is to inform us of issues, keep us informed of what's going on through there. But I'd so much rather hear from the people of Baldwin County because I want to hear the boots on the ground, how this affects. I was able to talk to teachers and find out, I don't want to deal with AEA. I want to deal with the teachers. What can I do to help you? We had an issue with counseling for students that came up where some people were instructed that we had removed the abilities for counseling to happen in schools. And it's like, that's not what the bill did. We've spent a lot of money on mental health across the state. We've changed the direction of mental health across the state for this last 8 years. We're trying to go in the right direction. It took a long time to get us there, but we've made significant improvements. We didn't set everything back by changing that, but I had teachers and counselors reach out to me and say, why did y'all do this? Was able to explain to them what we did, and that's not what they were being told. So now they're able to continue that counseling that we had intended to happen through there. So whether it's teachers or real estate, whether it's anybody, you don't have to have a specific cause. You don't have to have a specific, I'll only take you if you have this title behind you or these people behind you. And if you live in District 96, call me, email me. Even if you don't live in District 96, call me and email me and tell me what's going on. So much of what we do, it's unfortunate that we get people that flood our inboxes through these groups of, it's prepared emails already. So all they're doing is clicking a button. They're not typing anything out. Sure. It's the same. It's a format, block format of rinse and repeat. So someone will send out an email to a group and say, hey, contact your legislator like this. And sure, we get probably a couple thousand emails a day because people flood our email inbox on this. And it's great. But if it's something that's already pre-typed, if it's the same, if I've got 1,000 emails in my box that all have the same subject line, they're all the same, you're not getting the same attention as if somebody reaches out and says, Representative Simpson or Matt, call me Matt. I live in your district. This bill affects me. How can we do something to address this? That's what hits home. That's what I enjoy to do. And that's what the job is. You don't feel, people, a lot of times people wait too late and they say, well, you voted on this or you voted on this and I'm mad at you because you voted on this. And it's like, I didn't know, we're only as good as the information that we receive. I didn't know there was opposition to this. I didn't know how this would affect you through this process. I'm not telling you I'm right 100% of the time. Again, my wife doesn't agree with me 100% of the time, and I'm not here to tell you I'm right 100% of the time. But I'm always willing to learn and figure out if I've made a mistake, let's fix it, let's correct it and see what we can do. If I haven't made a mistake, let me explain to you why it's not a mistake, but let's have that open line of dialogue. And my pastor, Chad Stafford at Coastal Church, one of the greatest lines that we use all the time is, you don't have to think like me to be my friend. We can disagree on a lot of things, but if you need help or if there's an issue that we can agree on, what can I do to help you through this process? Regardless of how you feel about me personally, I'm still your representative. Let me see what I can do to help you and go through this process. That's the role. That's the job. So, that's what I feel like, to be an advocate for the people, to be an advocate for the district, to be an advocate for our area, and to be an advocate for our state, to make our state better. The one thing that I wish I could do, and I would love nothing more than at the end of my service or whenever I'm not here anymore, if someone says, you know what, the state of Alabama is a little bit better off because he served, and it was better than he found it when he started.
Amen.
That's all I can ask for.
Great. Great. So what differentiates you from your opponent, and what's your message to the voters on why they should vote for you?
I have learned one of the best advices I was ever given in politics was, if I'm talking about me and they're talking about me and all the people are hearing about me, that's fine by me. That's fine by me. So I don't get into, I will happily go through any specific issues that anybody wants to talk about. There's a lot of things that are going out that are being said that are just untrue. But I'll be happy to discuss any issues. I'm not going to discuss my opponent because I'll be happy to talk about me. One of the things people talk about is I'm getting labeled as, oh, he supports gaming. And well, you have no clue what really happened behind the scenes there. First of all, I don't support gaming. I support the right for the people to vote on whether they want gaming or not. The last time the people voted was 1999, and that's a completely different generation. I was 19 years old at that time. I'm 46 now. So, the ability to hear from the people. In the Constitution of Alabama, gambling is the only issue that is required a vote of the people. So we're not saying, hey, I support gambling. We're saying, that's up to y'all if y'all want gambling or not. Now, one of the things that I fought for was to make sure that gambling would not be in Baldwin County. Fought tooth and nail, had a ton of discussions through that, and fights behind the scenes in caucus and fights on the floor and fights in the discussion of how the bill was drafted to make sure that gambling would never come to Baldwin County under the bill that I voted for. If it didn't have that inclusion on it, I wouldn't have voted for it. But under that, there were only 7 places that would be able to have gambling, and Baldwin County was not one of those places. It would take another constitutional amendment, another vote of the people to change that. The bill, if you have to look at the bill that we have. So people are saying, well, how dare you vote for gambling? I didn't vote for gambling. I voted to give you the right to vote. But if you're going to vote, you're not going to vote to bring it to Baldwin County, and that was my line in the sand. There's a lot of talk about, free markets, and I'm a big free market person. I don't believe government solves problems. That's generally my philosophy. I'm very skeptical. I'm very much a skeptic on a lot of stuff. I think government causes more problems than it solves for the most part. If government can get out of the way, that's when the people will flourish. I believe in a bottom-up style of government, meaning there are some issues that should be handled by the city. I don't want the state to come tell us to do this. The same thing I told you earlier was I don't want Montgomery telling Baldwin County what to do. The same way I wouldn't want Washington coming to tell Montgomery what to do. I don't want Montgomery to come tell Daphne, Spanish Fort, Fairhope, Foley, any of those cities, this is how you have to behave, or because of this, you have to do this. I believe in the best government starts small, because when you go to the store, this is a great conversation, because if you're in your district every day. You're at the store, you're at church. When you go anywhere, people are going to talk to you about their issues.
That's right.
You know your district better than I know your district. So my job is to, if you call me and say, hey, this is something that the city needs, what can I do to help you get the resources that you need to be able to govern the best? It's the same thing with the county. It's the county needs something. What can I do to advocate for the county to get that done? That's my role, whether it's on a individual level with a constituent, whether it's on a city level or whether it's on a county level or to the statewide level. I'm just a conduit to be able to fight and advocate for those people through there. So that's a long way of going about saying I'll happily answer any specific questions that are issue topics and go through them. I'm a policy nerd, man. I will go through all this stuff. I like to read the bills. I like to know what I'm voting on. I like to know these things. And when someone labels you with something that they have no clue what they're talking about, or they have no idea of what they're really saying, and that's the message that gets. I wish I could there are some politicians, and there are some very, very good ones that can narrow down an issue into about a 4-second soundbite. And they get their message across in a 4-second soundbite, and they're fantastic at it. I've never been blessed with that skill. I'm a long talker. We've been talking all this time. I think you may have asked like 2 or 3 questions. Just let me run. But I need to learn how to be able to be more succinct and more precise on what I'm saying. But I'd rather spend the time with you to have the conversation so you can see where I'm coming from. I can see where you're coming from. We're not going to agree 100% of the time. You may get mad at votes that I've taken on certain bills, but we always live to see the next day. And okay, just because we disagreed on this bill, Tim, how can I help you on the other one?
That's
What
right.
can I do? That's what's firmly what I believe from all of my city council people that I represent in Daphne and Spanish Fort, the mayors, and again, not just that district, because I don't just represent that district. I'm voted because I live in that district. I'm voted by those people to represent the state of Alabama, Baldwin County, and Daphne and Spanish Fort.
Absolutely. And I think that a lot of it's, like you said, is the information and reaching out. So if there was something that I had a question about, I think getting the information from you of how you explain, okay, this is why, and this was the implications, or there's certain times where you got to kind of meet someone here to get what you want over there, that helps a lot. And I'll tell you, I moved to this area about 10 years ago from Virginia, and we saw Virginia go downhill after certain policies came in, and we really saw how politics affected our daily life. And I was never involved in politics up there. And one of my first things was when I got here was I want to get involved with politics. And I started volunteering at the Republican headquarters and different things. And that's where I met you, was at the some of the different local meetings that we have. So I want to thank you for your leadership within the Baldwin County Republican Party, within holding our ground here, also as a state level representative from the state. And, you may not know this, but you were part of looking up to you and other folks as that mentorship through of what's the right things to do, what's the right things to fight for, not fight for. And I've always seen you there picking up your phone, talking to people, as well as staying after meetings, long time, talking to constituents about their issues they've had. So we appreciate that, and thank you for coming on today.